Sandman and Good Omens, two TV series which are returning for final seasons, or in the case of Good Omens, one-off specials, both of which are shows based on works either written or co-written by one Neil Gaiman. Now, if you've been following anything about Neil Gaiman over the last year or so, you'll know that he has been embroiled in some controversy, that he has been accused of many things, of which make me very uncomfortable about engaging in any of his work. So I'm left with a bit of a decision. These are two TV shows which I have watched the previous seasons of. 2 seasons of Good Omens, 1 of Sandman. Do I watch their final installments? I don't want to support Neil Gaiman, but it is a bit more complicated than that. And when we're talking about boycotting or just deciding for yourself not to engage with a particular problematic person's work, there are various factors to consider to decide when you're deciding how much you want to take that disengagement from their work. And I want to go through my thought process on these two properties specifically, and then talk a bit more widely about how that differs from other properties which I have decided to take a step back from, and creators that I've decided to take a step back from as well. Hello, welcome to Culture Filter. This is a channel where I like to talk about all the geeky pop culture that I like and consume. And today we're talking about, well, tangentially, the works of Neil Gaiman that are coming up, the adaptations of Neil Gaiman work that are coming up, but also I'm going to touch on some other properties which I've had to think twice about over the years, or recent years specifically. Now, I'm not going to go into too much about what the allegations against Neil Gaiman is. You can find that all over the internet if you want to, but it's safe to say that the accusations make me feel uncomfortable about engaging with his work. Now, what this has meant definitely so far, I can tell you, it means that I've never read a Neil Gaiman book, but I had always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to. I'd heard good things about them. I wanted to sample this amazing creative worlds that he had created that I had heard were very good. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to read a single book of his. I'm certainly not going to buy any books of his, and I have no intention of reading any of his books ever again. Or at all, because I've never read one to start with. Now, this is the easiest decision because books are primarily the work of one person, or, some are co-written, but predominantly there is a single creator. Now, I don't want to, if any of you work in the publishing industry, I don't want to downplay your involvement. Obviously, he would have had editors and there would have been a collaborative work in that sense, but in the more direct sense of this is one author's work, and therefore it is much easier when that author is problematic to go, okay, I just won't read their stuff because it is just them that are the headlines of this. The people that are going to lose money by me not buying this are just them and a big publishing company, but really I'm not that fussed about the profits of companies. I'm focused on individuals. So not going to read any of his books. There's also TV shows which I might have been interested in watching, so one of which in particular with Neil Gaiman that I was always intending on getting around to at some point, that now I'm not going to start. I haven't already got an investment in these properties, so why would I give myself that in this instance? In particular here, I'm thinking of American Gods. That was a TV series which I had seen good things about. I had read good things about. The premise of it sounded interesting to me, but again, I'm not going to engage in that now. I'm not going to go and find that series. I'm not going to start that series new. But that brings me on to Good Omens and The Sandman, because those are two shows which I have started watching that came out, and I started watching them before any of the controversy around Neil Gaiman came out, and therefore I've got an investment in the story already. And so when I'm considering if I'm going to carry on watching past this point, there are various factors that I personally want to take into consideration. Let's start with Good Omens. For starters, there's the fact that the original book that the TV series is based off of, Good Omens, isn't just a Neil Gaiman book. It is a co-authored book between Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett. Terry Pratchett, whose work I love, who I have no reason to lose any respect for that I know of at the time of recording this video, and I kind of do feel that he's passed away since before I believe the TV series started, and I feel like, he deserves to have his story that he was involved with completed on television as well. So so that makes this one the easier out of the two, I think, because it's not just based on a work by Neil Gaiman. There is the slightly selfish aspect that season 2 was left on a cliffhanger, and I hate loose endings, so I do want to see that wrapped up, and I do want to see what happens next. What has made this decision also easier, as well as it being a sort of co-thing with, it's a co-written thing originally with Terry Pratchett, the original, is that while Neil Gaiman was involved in the making of this series, in behind the scenes for seasons 1 and 2, he has either stepped back or been asked to step back for the final. There's also the fact that they have truncated the final into one single sort of feature-length special rather than making it over a whole season. And that kind of strikes me as that they want to conclude the story for the fans in a satisfying way, but also get it over and done with as quickly as possible so they can move on from Neil Gaiman. And I respect that. I think that's a good decision. While it may mean that some things feel rushed in that final 90 minutes, I think it's a good compromise between continuing it on and doing a full season and also not leaving fans waiting. TV shows are also different from books in that they are very much a collaborative effort. Yes, this was based on the work of Neil Gaiman, and yes, he was involved. But, there are other writers involved in this. There's, people I respect a lot, like David Tennant and Michael Sheen, who are upstanding members of the community and just absolutely, brilliant people who I feel they deserve also to get to finish telling this story. And I would hate that their work goes to waste because of the actions of one man. And this, again, this isn't the same as if they decided to get involved in this project after everything about Neil Gaiman came out. This is something that they were already involved with. They've already done 2 seasons of, and now they're just doing the wrap up for it for the fans, basically. So that made the decision that I'm definitely going to watch Good Omens final wrap up special fairly easy, I think. Sandman is a little bit more difficult. For starters, it's not a truncated season. It's not just watching one episode of TV that I've got to do now. It is a whole season. This is beyond their control. They had filmed most of this before any of this stuff about Neil Gaiman broke in the news. So they had already filmed the season. There's not much they could do about that. And given that it was already filmed, already sort of in the post-production process, what are they going to do? Scrap it? They might as well put it out. It's not like they could cancel the series at that point, but they are just doing this one final season. Now, I don't know the decision-making process of that. Maybe it was always meant to be a 2-season show. I don't know, but at least now we know they're wrapping that up, and we've only got this left to watch. So, while I haven't made any absolute decisions on this, it is out in a few days, so I will have to make a decision soon. I think I will probably watch this for the closure of the story. Again, this is none of the actors that have been involved and put in the hard work already's fault of this, so I think I will probably see this through to the conclusion and have that closure of that story. Now, one thing when I'm deciding what I'm going to watch based on somebody problematic being involved is, who benefits financially, and there is no doubt that Neil Gaiman would have been paid a fee for the rights to do these. I suspect that it was a set fee, and therefore he would be getting that money regardless of if they had cancelled these or not, because the deals would have already been done for them. So I suspect it's not me watching isn't going to give him any more money. I don't know that for certain, but I suspect. And that also plays into my decision. He's getting some kind of financial benefit from these things existing, but it's not an ongoing thing. And however many people watch, it's unlikely to affect the amount that he gets. It's also, given the situation around him and what has come out, unlikely that even if these were a rating success, that they would lead to any more adaptations of his work. They're not certainly going to lead to any more seasons of these TV shows, so I don't have to worry about that and making this decision again. If there was another adaptation of a Neil Gaiman thing, I can just ignore it and not watch it, and other people may choose to do the same. But I don't think it's likely to lead to any more things. Unlike some other problematic creators, which we may talk about in a minute, there isn't an ongoing thing where, oh, this is still successful, so we're going to keep on churning out more of this. I don't think that's an issue with this situation. So how does this compare with how I react to other creators that have caused issues for me morally in the past? Okay, so let's take, for instance, just a novelist. Let's take Roald Dahl, who is long deceased by now, had some problematic views, in my opinion, and as a consequence, if he was alive today and financially benefiting off new adaptations of his work, I would choose not to engage with them in the same way as I won't engage with any other new Neil Gaiman works. However, he is long dead, he is not financially benefiting from this. His estate might be, but his estate isn't him, and his estate, you can't assume that they would have the same views, hopefully they do not, as he once did. So therefore, I don't feel as bad when the author is dead and not financially benefiting from it, as long as the work being adapted isn't adapted in a way that somehow reinforces and supports any problematic views that the author might have had. If it's adapted, if there was anything in the original work, if that's removed, or if that particular work didn't have any problematic things in it and it was just stuff he'd said outside of his writing that was problematic. If an author is adapted like that, that isn't an issue for me. When they're you go, especially if you go far enough back in history, you're not going to find somebody without problematic views in some degree of their life. There's always going to be, even if you go back 50 years or so, every writer is going to have thought, maybe even voiced some things we would question now. But they're not alive anymore, so they're not currently thinking that. They're not currently spreading any ideology. They are dead, and you can just take these as historical bits of fiction. Now, on the opposite side of that, you've got something like J.K. Rowling, which, if you disagree with her views, she's particularly vocal on trans issues. If you have a problem with that, then she is currently constantly using her money that she gets from these properties to put towards the spreading of her ideology in that area. So that's much more of a problem. You are, by engaging with her work and financially supporting her work, you are financially supporting what her views are and allowing her to funnel money into suppressing trans rights and things like that. So that's a much more problematic issue, and therefore I choose to disengage at all from any J.K. Rowling work and don't want to do anything that will put money into it. Then let's look at another recent property, and one probably that is the most relevant to what I liked the Harry Potter films, but I never read the books. I wasn't a massive Harry Potter fan beforehand. And Roald Dahl, I enjoyed, but I wasn't like a fan of Roald Dahl. I was just someone who enjoyed a couple of the films and a couple of the books. But Joss Whedon is someone who I was a huge fan of, whose work I loved. I watched everything he made, even that random Shakespeare film he filmed in his garden with his friends. I watched that. I was a huge Joss Whedon fan. But when it came out about how he treated some cast on set and stuff, I had issues and I wanted to pull back a bit from that. I will still always love the stuff that he made, and I do think he's a great writer, but that being a great writer and great at art does not excuse certain behaviours towards other people. It doesn't excuse bullying, and therefore I am less inclined. I certainly wouldn't watch anything new of his, but I will still go and rewatch stuff that I have fondness for, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, etc., etc. And there is a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer TV series on the way. However, he is not involved in it. In terms of financially, that's a bit more vague. He sold the intellectual property rights to Buffy even before the TV series was made, when he made the film. He wrote the film, but he does not own the IP to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So what kind of deal he's got with the characters, whether or not he gets any financial compensation for the use of them, I don't know. But if he does, it's minimal, and he does not have any creative involvement in any project currently on the slate for Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I will watch the Sarah Michelle Gellar helmed new revival of Buffy, or whatever they tend to do whatever they're going to do with that series. And I would be less inclined to if Joss was involved. certainly without him making some kind of apology for the way he acted before and making some kind of recompense. His transgressions are bad, but they're not on like Neil Gaiman accusations or J.K. Rowling views type bad. So it's kind of like the right steps. Maybe he could come back from it. I don't know, but it's definitely not at that point now. All of this is to say that I think if any of these things, you can't really have a blanket rule. You kind of got to take it on a case-by-case basis based on what's being made, how involved the person is. Are they being financially compensated? And if they are, what are they funneling that money into? Because Neil Gaiman, while I'm sure he gets some money for these things existing, I don't see him funneling it into anything that's harming anybody currently, at least not that I can see. So it's a different situation to somebody who is constantly funneling that money that they're getting into something which is harmful. So you kind of, yeah, it's been playing on my mind. I thought I'd make a video about it. I don't know if you're interested in this. Let me know what your thoughts are. What makes you decide to not engage with something because of a problematic person involved somewhere in it? Does the fact that there is it's a group collaborative thing make a difference? Does the fact that, you know, financial compensation that the person might be receiving make a difference? Or what they're doing with that financial compensation, or if they're creatively involved anymore? Does any of that make a difference to you? Let me know in the comments below. I'd be intrigued by your own thoughts. I'll be back with more videos soon, so please do stick around, subscribe, and all that jazz for more geeky pop culture and random discussions like this one. See you soon.